And we are back, and it is time for the Else Words. This is our big main topic for the show, and we are keeping it in the Marvel universe here, and we are going to be talking about the Sony happenings with their the Spider-Man property, because they are working on expanding the Spider-Man universe, with their deal. The first bit is that there is
Well,
work.
let's back up for a second. So, what they're working on, at least initially, is not expanding the Spider-Man universe, but creating a Sony Marvel universe that, while relates to a bunch of Spider-Man secondary and tertiary characters, is not initially, at least, involved with Spider-Man, and that's where it gets weird.
Yes. Um he so this is like Corey said, is the weird part. The first bit is that um there is a working on a Silver Sable Black Cat movie, which is being written by Chris Yost, who worked on Thor Ragnarok and did some comics for Marvel. I can't remember what ones he did though.
Well, Chris Yost usually teamed up with Craig Kyle. Started out, I think his Marvel relationship started out doing stuff for the cartoons, and on the Wolverine and the X-Men cartoon, Chris and Craig created the X-23 Laura character.
For
Who,
yeah, his work on XMen Evolution.
yes, that's right, is X-Men Revolution. So he created the character that is now a big part of the Logan movie, and is actually Wolverine in the comics. And I think wrote the introduction or co-wrote the introduction of the character into the mainstream Marvel universe after Joe Quesada had done some writing of her in NYX, which was New York X-Men, which is a weird series. But they got to bring her in, and they started writing more X-Men comics at the same time as doing stuff like the Avengers cartoon series and a couple other things. So Chris and Craig have quite a bit of pedigree with the character, with Marvel Universe and stuff, but mostly in X-Men. He did write Volume 2 of the Scarlet Spider, but that's really, I think, as far as comics connections, that's where it stops.
Yeah, that's because I'm looking at his Wikipedia at his thing. There was that. He did Fear Itself, Spider-Man number one through three. Um, AVX number three. He was a writer of the Black Widow versus Magic story. He wrote A plus X number 7, which he was a writer of the Thor Iceman story. But yeah, so I because I had remembered seeing his name in the comics. Couldn't remember what it was for exactly. But this is, this is going to be a good fit for him working with this. He's building on a script that was written by Lisa Joy, the co-creator of HBO's Westworld. But yeah, so this is the first part that's really interesting. And the whole relationship seems weird because where it seems like Spider-Man gets to cross, go into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, all these other characters, and from one of the articles that we have here, there are 900 Marvel characters that they have to pull from here. Only one of them gets to go, well, two, well, three if you count, Aunt May and Uncle Ben.
Oh,
Know,
more. I mean, from what we've seen from the trailer of Spider-Man this week, we'll talk a little bit about some of the characters. Oh man,
I'm going Jeff Kanata on this one, dude.
Well, yeah, you're gonna have to plug your ears when I talk about it. Anyways, so one thing, not yet. Shh. Put your headphones on, dumbass. So one thing that we should say is, so the Silver Sable character, which a lot of people probably aren't familiar with because I haven't seen her have a series in a long time. but she's a character that was created by Tom DeFalco and Ron Frenz in 1985. She's a mercenary who runs a company that hunts war criminals. There was a series for a while of Silver Sable, and I think that there were a few Spider-Man villains that were reformed that were a part of her team. And then Black Cat, people might be more familiar with, is Felicia Hardy. She's basically a cat burglar who had a relationship with Peter Parker for a long time. And it's kind of like Marvel's version of Catwoman in a lot of the ways of like her interactions with Spider-Man, and she's like romantically charged of seeing him and didn't know his secret identity for most of the time that was going on. And she is the criminal in the night who steals stuff like Catwoman. But she's certainly grown as a character over the years. And it is honestly one of my favorite Spider-Man characters. So the mixing of these two characters, I've not ever seen them doing too much together in the comics, and certainly not outside of the context of having Peter Parker as a through point. But this, as of right now, this movie has no ties to Spider-Man, but may have ties to the next movie that they're talking about developing.
Yeah, it's weird because it says the spin-offs are not off. This is from the Hollywood Reporter article. The spin-offs are not offshoots from the upcoming Spider-Man Homecoming, but rather projects spun from the overall franchise and based on Sony's Marvel's Spider-Man universe. So it sounds really weird when you look at it. But I mean, I'm honestly with these and the other story that Venom's going to be an R-rated movie, and in its own, it's going to be like, I think it's like going to be its own thing as well. I mean, as long as they're doing good stories, I don't care.
Yeah, and first, something to say is how brave they are for trying to get a superhero film out that has not only a female lead, but two female leads as a part of it. Now, we don't know if it's just Silver Sable and Black Cat. It's something that almost seems primed to be like a Suicide Squad if we've got multiple characters. Certainly Silver Sable has her team, or if Black Cat is supposed to be either on the team or someone that they're fighting against. I don't know. It's hard to say. But in a world where we're just about to get a Wonder Woman film, and we are going to eventually get a Captain Marvel film, the Carol Danvers version of the character, but we still haven't gotten an announcement on a Black Widow film, which Silver Sable seems to hold a lot of the same traits that you would expect from a Black Widow movie.
Yeah.
It's funny that it's been such a struggle to have these films come out with female lead characters for so long, and Sony is at least saying, "Oh yeah, we can do that."
No, yeah, definitely. So let's go to the other side here with this, and that's the with the Venom story. So right now I don't think a lot is known about it. But they're saying it's going to be rated R, which makes sense. And so they're going to be going with the Eddie Brock thing here, or with Eddie Brock's Venom, obviously. But I'm here's the thing: I'm not the biggest fan of the Eddie Brock Venom. I like the Flash Thompson version. I like
the Flash Thompson version is more heroic. It's a redemption story. But if you don't have a Flash Thompson needing to be redeemed, then it doesn't work. And people are, it's as much as we are beholden to continuity, people are going to complain that, but Venom started out with Eddie Brock. Venom started out as a bad guy and then eventually goes to these other things. But if Flash Thompson is being used in the Peter Parker Spider-Man films, and there's not a crossover between these films planned at this point, then it doesn't make sense to try to use Flash Thompson again
Yeah.
in this. But the whole reason for being of Venom and for the animosity that Eddie Brock has, it's all tied to Peter Parker.
Yeah. And this is you're hitting on a big point here. You're hitting on something that scares me with this, because with both of these stories, they are not directly tied into the stuff. Now they could be in the future, but it's a little worrying if they've already got cast, for the Venom movie, for instance, if they already have Eddie Brock cast in Spider-Man, in Spider-Man Homecoming, then how are they going to tackle this one? Is this one going to be based more on the older stuff? How is it?
I'm pretty sure that Eddie Brock's not in Spider-Man Homecoming. And because this is all coming from Sony as a studio, and Sony is, of course, involved in the Spider-Man film too, I'm sure that they were careful about what things they were going to leave available to themselves that weren't going to go into Homecoming. And I'm sure there was also a giant fucking contract of what was going to be allowed in the Spider-Man movie and what Marvel was going to have access to, and the back and forth of that. And they're like, yeah, we'll let you use these things and you'll let us use those things, but you're not getting all of it, and we're not getting all of it. So we don't want Venom fighting Captain America before we've had a chance to play with Venom, at the very least. We don't want, I don't know why, Silver Sable or Black Cat in the Marvel co-produced movies. Maybe they just feel like there's too many people running around the street and all their periods are going to sync up. All I know is that it's still very strange, because these characters have all come from their association with Peter Parker and Spider-Man. I mean, they're calling it the Marvel Spider-Man universe at Sony without an inclusion of Spider-Man, which would... So one of the things is that the article kind of goes on is that there may be a falling out of the MCU and Spider-Man after the Homecoming sequel. After the Spider-Man Homecoming sequel, the contract is that the back and forth of using this version of Spider-Man started out in Civil War, is going to be in Spider-Man Homecoming. He's going to appear in the Avengers Infinity movies, or at least one of them, but probably both. And then there's going to be a sequel to Homecoming. And that probably after that, there will no longer be a Marvel conjunction film for the Spider-Man stuff. So does that mean then that the Tom Holland Spider-Man character gets to be involved in the following Sony Spider-Man universe stuff? Does his Spider-Man suddenly show up and get to have a crossover with Venom and get to have a crossover with Black Cat and Silver Sable? See, with Silver Sable and Black Cat, those characters exist outside of him before they meet him.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. With Venom, it doesn't. Venom is just a dark, horrific version of Spider-Man, if done like the comics. And it would be weird to explain how this Venom exists without ties to Peter Parker, and then have him meet up with Peter Parker and go like, hey, you seem really familiar to me in a way, and I don't know exactly why.
I honestly feel I'm really torn on this, because on the one hand, I want Marvel stuff, or Marvel, to have all their toys back. I want to see them have the rights to the Spider-Man universe. I want them to have the rights to the Fantastic Four, to all, everything here, so that they can make great stories, great complete stories and stuff like that. But this doesn't make sense, because for one thing, I would be a little worried that we would now have a fourth recasting of Spider-Man. Like we go from Tobey Maguire to Andrew Garfield to Tom Holland to some other, younger kid, and to
No,
bring
I
into
think
this
they're planning.
universe.
I think the plan is once they are contractually finished with Marvel, that they'll bring Tom Holland into the fold with the other stuff. It will remain this Spider-Man. If this Spider-Man works, it will remain him in these other movies.
But see, here's the thing you just said there, and it makes me wonder, if it works, why would Sony want to go away from Marvel?
Because at this point in time, they have to split things with Marvel, and that's never a long-term goal. Unless this thing makes $2 billion, and they each get $1 billion, overall, they're going to be like, yeah, but we could be making all that bank. And on top of that, it's hugely complicated to work with two studios. That's why Hulk keeps not happening.
No, yeah. And see, my argument with that would be, look at their history. Look at the stuff that they had done in, beforehand, where you got the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man, did this amount of money. I'm rough guessing here. And then Spider-Man 2, and then Spider-Man 3, and then Amazing Spider-Man, and then Amazing Spider-Man 2, and then Spider-Man appearing in Captain America Civil War did gangbusters. And so it's like, where I get, yeah, it's the whole, you got to split between people, but at the same time, it's sort of like, it doesn't make sense to me, because if you hadn't been doing good, if you hadn't been making good things by yourself, and then you get people, or you get help with it, why do you then go, oh, no, we got it from here, and then go back to making the shit that you were making before?
Well, keep in mind, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man made $820 million years before anybody else was doing superhero films other than Fox with Blade and X-Men. Spider-Man 2 did $783 million. These were not unsuccessful films. They were doing just fine with them until they went with a different direction after Spider-Man 3, which made, god damn it, $890 million, more than the first two. So and the Amazing Spider-Man films made $1.7 billion between the two of them.
Yeah.
So they weren't not succeeding. They were just critically not hitting the levels that they wanted them to. There was a lot of complications, and they wanted to reinvent. And they saw what Marvel was doing, and they said, especially when Sony was going through some pretty heinous shit behind the scenes, that's where a lot of this came from, is the person who was in charge of Spider-Man at Sony stepping down. And she's like, well, then I'm going to open up a relationship with Marvel and see if we can't make this work somehow. It was a lot of things that led to this getting to where we are with Marvel and Sony working together. And excellent. It turned out great for Marvel having Spider-Man in Civil War. It looks like from the previews, and this is not going to be something that'll set you off, having Tony Stark involved in Spider-Man Homecoming is adding some great interaction and flavor, and is going to entice people to see this movie, because in their minds, it's just going to be another Marvel movie. Most people aren't going to care of who the studio is. They just care that, oh, fucking A, Spider-Man and Iron Man in the same goddamn film together. That's great, because I love the Iron Man movies, and I love the Avengers movies, and I love Spider-Man in that last Avengers movie, even though it was Captain America. So I, of course, am going to go see this, just like I'm going to go see Guardians of the Galaxy 2 when it comes out, because I'm sold.
Okay, but then we go with them. We continue with them. And, you get, Spider-Man Homecoming 2, or, Spider-Man The Winter's Ball, or whatever they want to call, the sequel to the movie. And, it features, Ant-Man, or, another Marvel, cinematic universe hero coming in there.
Cap.
And then, Cap.
Resign Chris Evans and get Cap involved in this.
Yeah, and then done. That's the end of the contractually obligated playing together with their toys, and they go
not
over here.
Discounting the fact that this Spider-Man is already going to be in the Avengers movies.
But that's
4 more films, or that's 4 films still to go that none of it should have been released. that
But
there will be
isn't
Spider-Man.
the Spider-Man sequel after the fourth Avengers?
We don't know.
Because I'm going by if it's after the after Infinity War, after the other Avengers movie, then we get, this Homecoming sequel, and then it's all Sony.
Well, we're probably already in Marvel phase 5 to 6 at that point.
Yeah.
And here's the thing is you're thinking, well, then they're going to shoot themselves on the foot by no longer involving Marvel.
Well, no, I'm going, what I was going with that was you get to that point where, you get to the point where it goes back to Sony, and people are going and they're expecting, okay, what's Spider-Man going to get himself into? Who is he going to, interact with? And we don't see anyone who's in this universe that we should be expecting to see. And wouldn't that then turn people off to it?
Well, it might, unless they're having success with the other Spidey heroes and villains in the Sony universe that they've been establishing on the side, like Silver Sable, Black Cat, Venom, and so on. And at some point, you want the heroes to be able to stand on their own too. Like the first Iron Man was just Iron Man. The second Iron Man involved Black Widow. The third Iron Man, other than War Machine, who was an Iron Man character, the third Iron Man went back to just being about Iron Man. I would argue that worked better for me in a lot of ways than Civil War did, because Civil War was a movie that was not hugely about Cap. I mean, he was at the center of it, but it was, a lot of people have said, it was an Avengers movie called Captain America. And it made sense in the way that they were progressing with the characters. It made sense that was a story that needed to come next. Did it necessarily make sense that it was a Captain America movie then? I'm not sure. Other than the fact that Civil War in the comics really dealt with Cap and Iron Man, and it could have been Avengers Civil War, and it would have made as much or more sense.
Yeah.
But Thor Ragnarok is going to, we know, involve the Hulk, but introduce a lot of other characters, and it's seemingly going to focus more on Thor than all the other Avengers. I think that realistically is what we need to see is, can Spider-Man, after 5 appearances, survive on his own in his own films? I would expect that he could. If he's proven popular in those other movies, I think, again, most people won't think twice about it. They won't say, oh, but now he's not in the Avengers anymore and none of the Avengers can show up. They'll just go, hey, I've been digging the shit out of these Spider-Man movies. I can't wait to see number 3. Or fucking A, he's going to finally fight Venom and it's not going to be Topher Grace looking like a little bitch. I can't wait to watch that. Hopefully. And again, not disliking Topher Grace. I like Topher Grace fine, and Topher Grace shit. Topher Grace is no fucking Venom. And Spider-Man don't do no dance scenes. I just think that, yeah, it would be wonderful if either these things go straight over to Marvel, and Marvel just gets to control their own fucking universe, because they have done little wrong. They have definitely had some things that have been less successful, and certainly things that I don't enjoy as much if you go across the board of the television stuff and everything too. But overall, their films have been hugely successful, and it seems like they've figured out how to make these things work. And it seems like their input to Spider-Man makes it look at least like this version is going to do very well. Because it's hitting the right notes. It feels like Spider-Man. It's not all happening at night. He's out in the fucking daytime. The introduction of Michael Keaton as the Vulture. And there are some other surprises that I won't mention to you here because you're Kanadaing it.
So far you have like that's where I would end, because that's all that I know. Is and all that stuff, and then Spider-Man,
trying to be fair to you.
Yeah, and then Spider-Man wears a jacket over, like I see the poster or the picture with him wearing the windbreaker or whatever it is over his uniform, or over
and
his
lying in front of Avengers Tower.
Yeah.
But that's I'm not going to try to wreck shit for you. We say at the beginning of the show we'll spoil stuff, but we're not here to harsh anybody's time.
Mhm.
So it's voluntary if you continue to listen to the point where we start spoiling things that you might not be ready to be spoiled yet.
Yeah,
Gregor's fucking stuck here. He's got to listen to me.
yeah, and
He's captive audience.
and here's the thing, and this is where it is the bad part, and this is why, in my opinion, the big reason why the blog that I did for Galactic Netcasts, with the pull list didn't last as long as it did. You know, part of it was, yeah, I had work, but it was also the daily, you know, trying to find a news story, and it's like, here's this picture from Suicide Squad. I burned myself out on that stuff. So now my philosophy on anything and anything movie related is, until the first, like I will watch trailers until it's like, okay, I'm done. I don't need to see any more. With Spider-Man, I'm a lifelong Spider-Man fan. He was my first superhero that I watched. You know, he was gentle. He was kind. Sorry, getting off track here.
You're talking about a kid, by the way. You're talking about a
Yeah,
child.
yeah. Well, I was a child too. But actually no, because it was the cartoon from the 90s, and
I'm
he
just
was,
teasing, man. Don't
yeah.
examine the joke.
No, yeah. But but no, so it's like, I don't need to see any of it. Okay, pictures are cool. Yeah. Oh, hey, look at the costume. That's pretty sweet. As I'm going through my article, but I'm probably not going to watch any trailers until after I go see
And
Spider-Man Homecoming.
I will say the biggest complaint about the trailer seems to be that it gives away too much of the story.
Yeah.
So you are definitely doing yourself a favor by not watching it if you want to be surprised.
Yes.
That said, I don't think it's giving away so much of the story that I'm gonna like not get to enjoy the fucking movie. And there's still plenty of things that aren't touched on in the trailer. There's a lot of characters that don't get any focus at all. So, and it looks great. It looks absolutely great. But going off of that, yeah, it sucks to think that we'll have Spider-Man and Marvel crossover for a few features, and then that relationship will likely end. But if they give me some good fucking Spider-Man movies, I'll probably be okay. And we'll have an opportunity for 5 movies to have Spider-Man and the Marvel Universe crossover. But does it get to a point where maybe people are tired of Tony Stark being the go-to talky money supplier guy that shows up for things? Can Spider-Man just go be Spider-Man? Because he wasn't involved under Tony in the origins of the character. There was many years where Spider-Man was shunned by the rest of the superhero community and wasn't an Avenger and didn't kick it with the X-Men. And when he hung out with the Fantastic Four, he had a bag over his head. So it's realistically, Spider-Man started out as an individual that now we are spoiled by the teams, and spoiled by the amount of years that he's been in the Avengers and other things. But going back to basics could be a good thing for him.